The wind cut like a blade across the dry plain, stirring up dust as the last rays of sun slipped behind the mesa. A wagon rattled down the road, its wheels moaning, horses restless. Then, with a sudden jolt, it stopped. Boots scraped wood. A man's voice, slurred with whiskey and hate, barked, "Out!" A girl, no older than 20, was yanked by the arm and thrown to the dirt like a sack of grain. She hit hard, skin tore, her lip split, but she didn't cry. Not this time. "Shoulda stayed quiet," he spat, towering over her. "Ain't no place for you where I'm going." She looked up at him, eyes burning through blood and dust. "You sold me, Jed. Like a horse." He grinned, yellow teeth flashing. "You ain't worth a horse." Then he climbed back on, snapped the reins, and vanished into the horizon, leaving her in a storm of grit and silence. The girl didn't move. She lay there a long time, just the wind, the ache, and the sky. Somewhere not far, a lone rider watched from the ridge, lean, broad-shouldered, weathered like old leather. His name was Silas Carter. He didn't say a word, just watched as the girl crawled to her knees, blood running from her temple, chin trembling but proud. She stood, barely. The sunset caught her eyes, made them glow like fire behind glass, and even broken she stood straighter than most men Silas had known. He whispered to himself, voice low as thunder, "No man throws away a girl like that. Not on my land." She stumbled down the path, barefoot, lost. The earth swallowed her steps. The shadows stretched long and sharp, but Silas turned his horse, boots nudging the flank. He wasn't one to interfere, not since the war, not since the fire, but tonight was different, because sometimes the world gave you one last shot at redemption, and she just might be his. Night fell fast in the desert. The stars blinked awake like distant fires, cold and watchful. Somewhere out there, wolves cried to the moon, but the girl didn't hear them. Clara's breath came shallow. Her legs gave way beside a dry creek bed, arms scraped raw from the fall. She tried to sit up, but her body refused. Her dress clung to her like wet paper, ripped, dust-soaked, bloodied. She whispered, barely a sound, "Mama." Her eyelids fluttered. Fever burned through her. Infection from the gash on her side crept like a snake under the skin. Her vision swam. Then came the rattling hiss. A rattlesnake coiled 3 feet from her, tongue tasting the night. Its body pulsed in time with the desert silence. Clara didn't flinch. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe she didn't care. The snake tensed. Its tail flicked once, and just as it struck, crack. One clean rifle shot shattered the dark. The snake dropped mid-lunge, its body twitching, blood spilling onto the sand. Hoofbeats followed. Silas Carter stepped into the moonlight like a ghost from an old war. His rifle still smoked, steady in his calloused hands. He approached slowly, kneeling beside her, the fire in her skin, the dirt in her wounds. It all told him the truth. Too much longer and she wouldn't make it. He pulled a coarse wool blanket from his saddlebag, laid it over her gentle as morning dew. "You stay with me, girl," he murmured, brushing her hair back. "Ain't your time yet, not tonight." She stirred, barely, lips cracked. Her voice was a whisper of a whisper. Why, help me." Silas looked away, jaw tight. "Because someone once didn't." He lifted her into his arms, light as breath, fragile as glass, turned his horse with a single whistle, and rode. Behind them, the wind swallowed the shot, the snake, the blood, but ahead, far ahead, was a cabin with a blue lantern still burning. Hope ain't loud. It doesn't come with trumpets or songs. Sometimes, it just rides in quiet, carrying someone no one else would carry. The cabin stood alone, deep in the canyon where even the wind bowed quiet. A single blue lantern swung on the porch, creaking softly with each breeze, its glow cutting through the black like a prayer someone forgot to stop saying. Silas rode slow, careful. The girl, Clara, barely breathed in his arms. Her head rested against his chest, skin burning hot with fever. He dismounted with practiced ease, holding her close. The cabin door groaned as he pushed it open with his boot. Inside, it was quiet, dust on shelves, a kettle long cold, but the fireplace still held coals from a morning fire, and Silas stirred them back to life like a man who'd done it 1,000 times, with one hand, the other still holding her. He laid her on the cot in the corner. The blanket he'd wrapped her in now spread beneath her like a shroud. Her wounds were worse than he'd thought. The gash on her side had turned purple at the edges, scrapes on her arms, a bruise blooming beneath her eye. He poured whiskey into a tin bowl, grabbed a threadbare cloth, and sat beside her. "This'll burn," he warned softly, voice just above a whisper. She didn't respond. He cleaned the wound anyway. She flinched once. That was all. When he stitched her side, his hands trembled, not from fear, but memory. He'd stitched this way once before, a long time ago. A smaller body, softer hands. He shook it off. When she stirred, he backed away, palms up. "No harm coming from me," he said gently. "You're safe here." She blinked, eyes cloudy, then scanned the room, the stone hearth, the rifle on the wall, the photo of a woman and child on the nightstand, edges worn soft from years. "Where am I?" she rasped. "My place," he said. "Name's Silas." She tried to sit up, winced. "Why'd you bring me here?" she asked. He looked at the fire, not her. "Because someone left you to die. And I ain't the kind that lets that stand." The lantern flickered, casting shadows that stretched long across the cabin walls. Outside, the canyon held its breath. Inside, for the first time in years, Silas Carter wasn't alone. Morning broke slow over the canyon, the kind of gold light that made the dust glow like embers in the air. Clara stood barefoot in the doorway, the old blanket draped around her shoulders, watching the sky bleed from purple to fire. Her legs still wobbled, her ribs ached with every breath, but she was standing, and that was something. Behind her, Silas poured coffee into a chipped tin mug, his movements quiet, respectful. "You're up early," he said without turning. She nodded. "Didn't sleep much. Didn't figure you would." She walked stiffly out into the yard. Chickens clucked, a horse pawed the dirt. Everything felt too calm, like the world had forgotten what she'd been through. She grabbed a bucket, dipped it in the trough, and started toward the stable. "You don't have to do that," Silas called after her. "I know," she said, "but I need to." She wanted to feel useful again, needed to prove to herself she wasn't broken. Later that day, she found tracks in the dirt behind the barn, fresh, deep, circling. Boot prints, hooves, not Silas's. She froze, her throat dried up. That night the wind came stronger. Silas lit the lanterns and checked his rifle twice. Clara sat on the porch steps, knees pulled to her chest. She didn't speak until the moon was high. "He was here," she said. "Jed." Silas didn't react, just stared out across the open dark. "He looked right at me," she whispered. Then he smiled and rode off. Silas stood, walked inside, and returned with an old wooden chest. He set it down between them and opened it. Inside was a revolver wrapped in oiled cloth, heavy, worn, clean. "I buried this 10 years ago," he said. "Promised myself I'd never need it again." He looked at her, eyes hard but cocked. But if he's coming back, we're not meeting him with bare hands." Clara stared at the weapon, then at the man who'd saved her. She nodded once. "I'm not running anymore." The wind picked up, the lantern flame flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a lone coyote howled. 2 days passed without trouble, but out here, silence was never peace. It was the breath before thunder. The third morning, hoofbeats echoed through the canyon, slow and sure. Clara stepped onto the porch, rifle cradled in her arms. Silas followed, thumb resting on the hammer of his sidearm. A lone rider approached from the trail, long coat, star-shaped badge catching the sunlight. He dismounted with a grunt and tipped his hat. "Sheriff Alden Briggs," he said. Heard there's trouble setting up in this corner of the world. Silas gave a short nod. Could say that. The sheriff's eyes found Clara. He looked her over, not with suspicion, but understanding. He'd seen girls like her before. Too many. You Jed's blood? He asked gently. Stepdaughter, she replied. He sold me off like cattle. Briggs didn't flinch. Heard he's running up debts in every county that'll still let him breathe. Word is, he's desperate. Desperate men don't think. They burn. Silas glanced toward the ridge. He was here, not long ago, watching, feeling things out. Briggs nodded. He won't stop. Not till he's got her, or he's in the ground. They sat around the kitchen table, lantern light casting long shadows. Clara kept her hand on the rifle in her lap. Briggs leaned forward. There's a safe town 2 days' ride north. I can take her there. Start over. New name, clean papers. He won't find her. Silas looked to Clara. Her jaw tightened. No. Girl, this ain't pride, Briggs warned. It's survival. It's not pride, she said softly. It's enough. I've run enough. Briggs looked at Silas. If she stays, you're inviting a war. Silas didn't blink. I don't invite nothing, but I don't turn my back either. The sheriff stood and adjusted his coat. Then you'd better be ready. Outside, he mounted his horse, reins tight. I'll be back, he said, and I hope I'm not too late. As he rode off, the canyon swallowed the sound. Inside the cabin, Clara sat in the flickering firelight, staring at the revolver on the table. She wasn't scared anymore. She was waiting. Midnight arrived like a predator, dark and silent. The wind carried a chill that sank into Clara's bones. She huddled on the porch steps, blanket tight around her shoulders, listening to the night. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of brush made her heart jump. Then came the torch. A flaming projectile hit the window, shattering glass into the room. Sparks scattered across the floor. Clara yelped, rolling to the side, clutching her rifle. Clara! Down! Silas shouted, emerging from the shadows, revolver drawn. The blanket he'd wrapped her in moments ago now shielded her body. From the darkness, Jed appeared, flanked by 4 men, drunk, wild-eyed, laughing like demons in the night. We just want the girl, rancher, Jed bellowed. Walk away or you burn with her. Silas stepped onto the porch, boots digging into dirt, eyes locked on Jed. Not tonight, not ever again. The first gunshot cracked the silence. Dirt flew, horses reared, torches swayed. Clara ducked behind a barrel, rifle trembling in her hands. She fired once, screaming as a bullet whistled past her shoulder. One outlaw fell, clutching his chest. Jed roared, slamming his fist into the porch railing. You think this ends with her staying? I'll burn your life down, Carter. Silas leaned from cover, firing 2 shots, his aim deadly and precise. Dust and embers filled the air. Clara shot again, wincing at the sound of a body hitting the ground. The cabin shook with every roar of gunfire, the smell of smoke mixed with sweat and gunpowder. Clara's vision blurred, heart pounding, but she held her ground. Jed's men faltered, fear finally creeping in. Jed glared at Silas, lips twisted, blood dripping from a split eyebrow. This ain't over, he spat, retreating slightly with the others, their shouts fading into the canyon. Silas didn't relax. He moved to Clara, checking her trembling hands. She looked up, tear-streaked but defiant. They'll be back, she whispered. He nodded. Let 'em come. We're ready. Outside, the wind carried the smell of scorched earth. The moon rose over the cabin, pale and watchful, like a sentinel in the sky. Shadows stretched long and dangerous, but in the center of the chaos, a girl and a rancher stood together, unbroken. The fight was far from over, but for the first time they weren't afraid.